Okay, coaches, before we start this e-workshop, just a couple of housekeeping matters. Okay, for the smooth flow of this e-workshop, we'll be muting all the participants, but you can type your comments in the chat box. And try to switch on your videos so that we can see you also. And session format will be the presenter will take you through on what are the elements for this to create a positive culture in your coaching context. And also, questions to be sent through the chat. Okay, synopsis for today's workshop will be presented by Vincent Ong. He's a former PE teacher, and he also has vast amount of experience in terms of coaching, sports administration, and has worked with at multiple local sporting organizations such as Sport Singapore, NYSI, and MOE. And so today's workshop will be touching upon what are the elements to create a positive culture in your sport in terms of this spectrum of athletes' motivation, the self-determination theory, and also what are their practical applications in terms of sports coaching, and how they would affect your athletes' learning experience. So without further ado, I will hand over to Mr. Vincent Ong, who will present to you on this subject.
Hi, everybody. I hope you all can hear me loud and clear. So I'm going to just start my slideshow there and just hang on for a while and let me see whether that works. I hope everybody can see that nicely on the screen. If yes, keep going and chat so I can see you guys on the other side and I can see what you are chatting. So do type and let me know if you can see it fine and you can hear me clearly. Oh, yep. Okay, so today I'm going to be sharing with you all. I know Chonda has given you some background. I've done about probably over 20 years in coach education, even in the days of the National Coaching Accreditation Program till now, which the SG Coach, and I'm so happy to be involved with them as well to develop coaches. I'm passionate about that in that area. Even when I was in NYSI, coach development is really the area in which I like to be a part of. So before I move on, I want you all to share a little bit more about yourself. So tell me what sort of sport you are involved with, the age group that you are dealing with, so I have a better understanding of who I'm addressing it to. Can you quickly tap and then get used to interacting with me through the chat? So you know it is live. You know I'm looking at what you are typing. So can you just keep on typing as I move on and touch on what I'm going to be covering? So yeah, good. I can see badminton. I can see basketball, archery. Excellent. Ice skating as well. Great. Okay, so I've been involved with a few of the workshop and it has been pretty much touching on the work done in the earlier conference, and they tied up such that the workshop aligned to the different part of the season, the fall. So obviously for this one, perhaps we'll see that it's more into the in-season when we are talking about how do you create that positive culture in your sport? And you observe it, and a lot of us want that, right? Let me know. I mean, if you really struggle with that area, that you want to try and get really a good positive culture in your team, but you're not sure how to go about that. You don't know what's going on. And if you observe somebody else coaching and you know somehow or other that team dynamics there is really positive, it is something that you know that allows that team to have a clear, sustained success, and you want to create that. So you are here and obviously interested in knowing how do I get my athletes to be more positive, more motivated to be involved in the sport that you are coaching. Okay? So a lot of time you can just observe across and you can see that there are certain players who will give it their all. They will really do whatever they can to ensure that they can perform as best as they can. And you wonder, and as a group, win or lose, you will see the team dynamics is different from that of others, right? So here you see a real positive culture, right? So you want to try and find out, how do I get my team of athletes to be at that level? So what does it involve? So this afternoon, we will be touching on some of this. You want to learn how to try and create that. You want to have a way to better motivate your athletes. And you know about culture, but what exactly about culture that you want to try and influence? Okay, so in this workshop, I will introduce to you this idea of self-determination theory. Okay, so don't get too scared with that. I will try and simplify it as much as I can, and so you will get a bit more of the practical part of it. So basically, your athletes have some basic psychological needs. Okay, so I'm going to touch on what they are and how do we influence that. What is it that you need to do in order that you can motivate your athletes better in your sport. The second part is we talk about culture. What exactly is this culture? We talk about there's something different about that team. Is it something of their dress code? Is it something of what they do? Is it something about their behavior? One of the easiest analogy to use is this idea of the cultural iceberg. So I'm going to touch a little bit about that one. And the more practical sense, how do you create the positive culture in your sport? What are some of the tips that we can come up with? And then I'll try and summarize on that, and then we'll end this session. So it's going to be pretty short, so stay with me. And do keep your questions going, because Chuan Leong on the other end will help me try and see that out, and then we try and address that. So to start off, I thought this is a fantastic video to talk about culture. And I'm going to share about these All Blacks. I'm sure some of you would have seen this video. It's about the New Zealand rugby team. It is arguably the most successful and famous team in the world. And they talk about culture. If you just listen to some of the comments from start to finish, I want you to pick it out and I want you to put in your chat, what do you think critical in that video that talks about culture? Okay, whether it's the dress code, whether it's the way of behaving, put it into the chat and let me know what you think. Okay, so just listen up. Let me know if you have problem with the audio. I will assume that you can hear what I'm hearing. Okay, here we go.
Children growing up aspire to be All Blacks. I think it's the heart and soul of New Zealand.
I know how much the team meant when I was 6 years old, getting up in the middle of the night to watch the All Blacks play.
When they're in the All Black team, they've been passed on the responsibility of that black jersey with the silver fern. It's their time in that jersey, and it's their responsibility to enhance the legacy. Better men make better All Blacks. That's really about self-improvement. And it's not only about rugby, it's about life. Young men driving together to produce something that they're proud of.
I think it just encompasses that idea of you can always be better, whether it's off the field or on the field, and if you have that characteristic, then you'll be a great All Black.
Good people make great teams, and people that aren't very nice, although they might be superstars, we don't want them. It's about sustaining a culture of success, week in, week out, year in, year out, being the best team in the world. That's our goal.
if you recognise how much of an honour it is to pull on the black jersey, then the jersey will let you do things that you wouldn't have thought possible.
As All Blacks, you're expected to win. And does it give us any advantage to the haka? Without question. It's about going to battle with your friends and your mates, standing shoulder to shoulder.
It's not only about playing great rugby on the rugby field, it's about how these young men conduct themselves off the pitch. That humbleness, keeping your feet on the ground, realising that you can get better all the time.
The legacy of the jersey is more intimidating than any opposition, and the key thing for us as past All Blacks is to make sure that legacy continues.
I'm just very grateful that I got to spend as many years playing, for a team that I loved.
The last 100 years, the All Blacks are the most successful sporting team ever, and long may that continue.
Okay, now I hardly see anyone typing while you're watching the video, so I know you're probably absorbed with that. So now comes the chat. Well done. So I can see people talk about humbleness. It's not just about rugby, it's about life. Fantastic. And shoulder to win, sustain culture of success. Good. Dress code, yep. The jerseys, excellent. Yep, keep it going. What do you think? So from the moment get-go, almost every second, you're talking about elements of a sporting culture that's uniquely the All Blacks. The first one, the ritual of the haka, the battle cry. I think is world famous for that. Now, so that comment about, getting ready for the battle with your mates standing shoulder to shoulder, that's what it's all about. That's unique. That defines the All Black, right? When you hear the haka, it's associated very strongly with the All Blacks. So that's one. So they talk about a mantra. What was the mantra that they go about? Can anybody remember what was the mantra of the All Blacks? It's almost like a motto to them. And that defines them. What line did they say? Can anybody remember that? It's to do with better man. Yep. Be better, somewhere close, ready. What better man makes? Yep, that's right, Eugene. Yep, better man makes better All Blacks. Okay, so that's unique. Again, their emphasis on the character of the rugby players that come through. I think you can hear some of the comments as they move along. They talk about, even though you may be a superstar, they are not going to accept you. All right, and that's the culture that is set in the All Blacks. The prestige of wearing that black jersey. So again, the black jersey is uniquely the culture, is symbolic to wear that. Similar to the national teams that we have, we talk about the Lions, we talk about the different sport has got that unique, talk about that jersey, that uniqueness of the jersey and the pride of wearing that jersey. Whether we have created enough of that legacy that comes from that jersey, well, it depends on the coaches, it depends on the organization, it really depends on a sustained and deliberate attempt to want to ensure that legacy stays on. So you hear from the video as well, they talk about the young New Zealand kids, they aspire to be an All Black. Now we think about our own sport. Our kids really aspire to be a national player for your sport. So that has an implication because whatever sport you are coaching, if there is no pride in wanting to be a national player or athlete in your sport, you may be having problems trying to create that positive culture that you want. So again, with that jersey as well, it comes from the responsibility, it says, enhancing the legacy. So the national players take so much pride that they need to impart that, that pride, okay? That belief that good people makes great team. it's passed on. It's not like it's the batch of the 1970s and then now the 1980s, they come up with something else. No, they believe truly that that is what makes the All Blacks as successful as they are. Okay, so a lot of gems that comes up from there. Now, I want you to try and remember that video for everything that you hear, everything that you have heard, because when we learn a little bit more about some of those things about the self-determination theory, I want you to try and visualize your particular sport, your particular athletes, your kind of environment. Can you create something close to that? What are the things that will be similar to your sport that you can create? Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so this part will be introducing the idea of self-determination theory. I know that's going to throw off quite a number of you who are not so comfortable with theoretical information, all right, or studies that deal with that. So I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. Okay, so bear with me. But for those who understand this, well, this is a useful theory to understand that your athletes, in order for them to stay driven and motivated, okay, I use this word driven because it's going to be easier for you to remember. Okay, so there's an acronym to it. So when we talk about drive and driven, what would we remember? The acronym, what? You're typing very quickly. What would go into your mind when you want somebody to be driven or drive? Anybody? Keep that chat going. I want your fingers to be, yeah, very good. Thank you very much, Victor. Car. So that makes it easier for you to remember the acronym competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Okay, so I'm going to try and break it down and make you understand what does it mean. Okay, so it's important because as coaches, you need to know that every of your athletes need these three basic psychological needs fulfilled. Okay, one, competence. Okay, when we talk about competence, you're talking about the need to have that satisfaction that whatever opportunities you have, they are going to gain success. In other words, they learn a particular skills from you. They can see that they are improving, that they are learning that skill, they are developing it, they are having successes. Small, large, it doesn't matter, but they see themselves being competent, right? So that need to feel effective and achieve value outcome, valued by the athlete themselves. Okay, so that's important. Let me try and use this. Can you see this laser pointer right here? Can you see now? Yep. So what I'm seeing, just in case I'm only looking at it myself. Yes, no? Okay, so autonomy. Autonomy is basically the need to feel ownership over one's behavior. In other words, there is a chance for them to feel positively engaged in your training. They have ownership over the development plans that you have for them, whether individually or for the team. They have a chance to decide for themselves in that goal setting what they want out of that training, what they want at the end of a season. So that need to feel that ownership. A lot of the new studies, and I've brought speakers in during the NYSI's conference, they talk about that, even as straightforward as doing a training program for them. If you give the autonomy to them where they decide in terms of the load and intensity, you will find that there is a lot more buy-in. They are more motivated to complete that training program that you have. And the last one, in terms of relatedness, you are talking about need to feel accepted and meaningfully connected with others. In other words, when they are part of your team, they find that they are being valued, they are being accepted by you as a coach and by their teammates. If they don't see that, if they keep bringing themselves to training and they find themselves distant, they find themselves it's a bit of a chore going into that training regime and there's no meaning. After I train, I just walk out of it, there is no connection. Then that bit about relatedness is a little bit weak. So that's going to affect in terms of feeling that key psychological needs of relatedness. I hope it's straightforward. So I will quickly summarize again. So when we talk about the C in the car, competence is talking about feeling that sense of success in learning the skill, in being able to achieve the sort of outcomes that you want out of playing in that sport, being involved in a competition, achieving the target set by you as a coach and by them as their athletes. Autonomy is giving that ownership to their behavior. In other words, they've got a chance to say, okay, that's a goal that I feel is going to be really allowing us to be pragmatic, you know, and it's a goal that is realistic, that we are able to achieve that. And I have a say, because collectively, we have communicated to you as a coach that, yep, we can do it. You know, it's not a case of, I'm a coach, I tell you, you are going to achieve that, and you drive yourself to achieve that. That's not giving autonomy to your athletes, okay? And relatedness, we talk about feeling accepted. The need for them to know that you are engaging them and that you are valuing them, and not only yourself, that the teammates and the environment that they are in, that they are together. So if there are obvious NSAs coaches here, and I see a lot of them, that means the whole organization as well. I see CoachSG coaches here as well, that they feel a part of the academy as a whole, or as part of your national team. Okay, so that's pretty much what the self-determination theory is. So what comes next is, with that, if you are able to fulfill or satisfy their 3 basic needs, what you will find that they will feel more control in their behavior. They will learn to experience the success and feel accepted. And with that, they will be more engaged with your activities. In other words, you will have a highly motivated athlete because you are fulfilling these 3 basic needs. How do you then know what kind of motivation are your athletes at? So this is a nice illustration of where your athletes should be. So I want you to try and now visualize, as I go through some of these levels of motivation, an athlete. Okay, maybe I will start the easiest one, the 2 extremes. So if you look closely, there are 3 big areas here. An athlete that's under the A motivation. In other words, they are almost totally watch out, if I can use that local term for it. They can't be bothered. How many of you have athletes who are there strutting themselves into the training session, can't be bothered? They look as though they are forced or out of place. They don't want to be in that program, but they are in there. And they're going to affect your team culture, your sports culture that you are trying to create. It just takes one who is not motivated, whether it's in your school team, whether it's in your club team. If they are not motivated, they are going to affect the dynamics of your team. Tell me yes if you have athletes like that. So as I go on, yep. I see yes in Lauren, so you know what I mean. Yeah, keep typing. So you are interacting, you share, and you can almost have your little chat there to talk about some of these people. So they lack perceived competence. They feel they are not good enough, or they are not improving. They don't see any value in being involved in that sport there. It's quite easy to look at somebody in that category. They are really listless, or they are not interested at all. So very easy to see somebody who is in this motivation category. Okay, so I'm going to move all the way to the other end of the continuum. So we look at the extreme. The other end, you have somebody who's really intrinsically motivated. They show strong interest in your coaching. They don't need a lot of scheduling to try and get them to complete the training regime that you want them, a training program that you want for that particular session. In fact, you will probably have them stay behind and wanting more. So you have that person who's intrinsically motivated. They see the fun in it. They are really somebody who wants to be involved in your sport. So that's somebody who is likely to be intrinsically motivated. Okay, so now comes the tricky part. You have the intrinsic one, easy. You know, these are the people you can leave alone, set them with a program. It's a matter of making sure that you have the right thing in mind. In fact, the latest one I saw an article about Juventus Ronaldo, right? Cristiano Ronaldo. He is one of those who is strong in that category. You will hear articles or stories about him staying behind to do extra, more than the other players. Now, he's a superstar. He's really world-class, and yet he is driven. You don't have to worry about him wanting to do more. It's a matter of making sure that he gets quality work rather than resource himself there, right? So something that we too have to watch out for. So I'm going to now tackle the one inside of this. Okay, I'm going to start off with the one on this side. So we have the bow chart here, right? The bow chart athletes here. Let's move on to the next one. I want you to try and visualize somebody from here. Now that person is probably going to comply when tell them you don't train, you are going to be punished. Perhaps it's not you, but it's probably the parent who say, you better get into that training today. If you don't get in there, I'm going to stop you from playing Xbox. So they will get a certain level of punishment. Or if you do it here, I will treat you with McDonald's. You have parents who do that. Or at a higher level, maybe at a teenage level, they will talk about rewarding them with a holiday or sort, so they will maintain that motivation. So they're actually on the intrinsic side. So all these four that I'm going to be talking to you about, they are on the intrinsic motivation level. Okay, so here we are talking about somebody needs to comply because they're either going to be rewarded or they're going to be punished. How many have dealt with people like that? Give example, throw it in so that people can understand, this kind of athletes, you are dealing with some of their parents as well. They say, are they doing it? If not, I'm going to kick them out. So again, punishment. Actually, you want them. They are going to be motivated. Maybe they don't show that success, but you hear that from their parents. They say, if they don't shape up, I'm going to pull them out. So it's a punishment. So they are going to be in your sport. Thanks or no thanks to your parent there, they are going to be punished. So they are in this category that they comply because they are threatened by that sort of a punishment. Yeah, some of them are, right? You mentioned that. Give an example. Give specifically who is influencing that. Okay? You have in school as well, teachers, right? Teachers telling you, if that kid doesn't pull up that grade there, sorry, I'm going to pull them out of your school team. Yeah, you have that. So again, they are going to be in that category. But you don't want them there. You want to push them to be here. And some of them there, but they may, unfortunately, also be influenced in this category. Okay, so as coaches, we got to be aware of the dynamics and the sort of motivation that your athletes are having to deal with. Then you have this introjection in terms of ego involvement, that they are going to be thinking that I need to do it because I think my dad wants me to be involved in that. I think that they are expecting me to be in there. I think that if I participate in sport, I won't let my parents down because that's what they're expecting me to do. Be in this badminton academy, be in this national age group. Even though I find it really a chore to be involved in that, I've really lost my interest, but I think that's what my dad is expecting me to. Okay, because back home, they will probably say, I spend a lot of money, in this fees, the coaching fees and so on. I expect you to reach that level. So indirectly, they will be in that category. They are knowing that there's expectation for them. The parents want them. I think that's what somebody wants me to be doing that. I think my teacher expects me to that. So they are in some ways driven by another person who they think that the expectation is that out of them. So it's different from now we're moving more closely to those who are intrinsically motivated, right? So they are the ones who identify with it because they are now into a club team. They are in the first team. They feel so much pride. They are starting to see that, yep, I belong in there and I don't need people to remind me. I see so much pride in being in the age group team, in the national team. I'm starting to know that it's starting to be my responsibility. So it's somewhat internalized in me. If I'm in the national team, if I'm in the club team, I need to perform. I need to be motivated. So they are starting to have it intrinsically. They see that importance individually. They know that. And it's because they are starting to be involved at a certain level. They see that kind of success. I want you to try and visualize this, you know. So these people are not going to be too influenced by the other chatterings or, you know, there's a lot of track. I want to be in that team. I want to be in the school team. I want to be in the national team. So they are the ones in that category. And then you have the more integrated one. So it's a little bit of a mix. So somebody who is integrated, then, for example, they have people who knows there's a lot of benefit in being involved in that sport. I want to be training in there. Sorry, I'm going to be a bit distracted because I had this prompting. Chon Leong, there are two who are waiting in the waiting room. Are you going to admit that? Because it's flashing on my face there. I think they want to get into it. Chon Leong. Yep, so the ones who are in that category, who are integrated, regulated, they are motivated, they know the benefit of that, and they want to be involved. So they are intrinsically, they are internalizing that I know the benefit of it. I know once I train as hard as that, stay in that program, I will be representing the national team in the SEA Games. I will be representing the team in the international championship. I'm internally motivated. I am integrating that with the benefits that comes from there. I know that, so I'm involved in that. So, Jasper, Richard is trying to get in. So Chuan Liang, quite a few coming in is flashing and blocking my slides. So I'm going to admit Jasper in. Okay. So I hope you understand briefly, all right, that category. So if you have done what I've asked you to do, for each of these four, all right, that you are able to view that person that we are talking about, somebody who is bochap, somebody who is pretty much constantly threatened or being rewarded, being involved in there, is still not intrinsically motivated, somebody who thinks a particular character, somebody who is significant others to their athletes, you know, they feel they are obligated to want to try and perform or stay into that program. So that is the interjection. Then identification, when they start to now know, okay, I'm part of this team, they start to know that I've got to stay in that program. So they identify with being involved in that particular team. And integration, they start to know the benefit of being involved in that. Intrinsic motivation, you don't have to worry about this lot of people. They know they want to be involved. They are probably the first one to come in. They will be all smiles, all ready, first to come, probably last to leave, that sort of people. So we are dealing with this kind of people. So I'm going to move on. So a very quick way to see that is, as a coach, you are trying to journey yourself into what I've just described. And you're going to try and get this individual, and I like this illustration about that steps there. So somebody who is bochap in your program, you are going to gradually see this athlete of yours move up that step, find a way to get them into this level where they are intrinsically motivated. They are going to stay in your program. They are going to be positive. They are going to be a great influencer. They are likely to be one of your leaders. Okay? So, in summary, all right, we as coaches need to have an idea of the sort of level of motivation that you're dealing with. So, remember, they start from somebody's bochap and it makes their way up to the categories that I've mentioned, and you want them to be right up there. And how do you do that? You got to keep in mind the earlier part when I shared about the 3 psychological needs. That's the areas in which you are trying to influence. Is it the competence level? They feel that they're not improving in their skill that's causing them to be probably not. Is it because they're not given some autonomy? In other words, you didn't give them a chance to say, I want it this way in my training. I want to be able to do this. Or in some ways, they have a say in how the team or the training should be, right? In some ways that you are comfortable with, you've got to give some form of autonomy. Whatever the age group, obviously the older they are, the more I would see that the autonomy should be given to them. And then the relatedness, that they see that they are part of the team. You hear that often, those who are intrinsically motivated, it may not just be you who's motivating them. They want to be part of that team. They want to come because they see a lot of values in being part of that. They see that they are being valued as an athlete in that team. Okay? So part of our attempt to try and create this positive culture in our sport, we must consider the current motivation level of your athletes. Okay? You want to help them be more motivated at the highest level. So this quote from Simon Sinek, all right, says it out. If you work hard for something you don't really care about, it's called stress. If you are working hard for something you love, it's called passion. Okay? So you want them to be passionate about your sport. And a lot of time we are reminded by this gentleman, unfortunately he has passed away, all right, he's Coach John Wooden. All the time we are mentioning him because he has captured 10 NCAA championship titles, all right? 10 titles in 12 years that he was competing in that, and it's an amazing feat. So that collegiate championship would have produced a lot of basketball players who enter into the NBA that we know, the professional league there. So the most famous athlete that he has coached is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Skyhook. He's that man. So he talks about being a good coach can change a game, but a great coach can change a life. And he is totally about this holistic idea of developing them, knowing your athletes to try and motivate them to perform at their best. But in order to do that, you really to know that individual personally. And it's not about just the sport itself. So that's very important. Okay, I'm going to test your knowledge of what has been shared so far. So this little cartoon clip there, take a look at it. Heads, I listen to instruction. My coach shouts. And tails, I listen to instruction. My dad shouts. Okay, remember the 4 categories. Tell me where would you think this kid would have been? Type it in. So those who have managed to absorb, okay, so the different categories of motivation level, where do you think they fit in? Okay, better than comment. Yeah, don't worry, try. Okay, A, motivation, close, it could be. One step above Bochap. Okay, excellent. That's what, Elaine. Interjection, external regulation, good. Yeah, about there. That's right. Excellent, excellent. So you would expect that this athlete obviously is verbalizing, right? So I've got to do it because either my coach or my parents. So you are starting to see this interjected regulation. Or it could be, hey, he's going to be punished. You look at how terrified, his eyes are almost popping out there, right? So obviously it could be external regulation. Okay, so in other words, he might be punished if you don't listen to the parents. Okay, and I'm sad to say that I've seen and observed there are a lot of parents who, perhaps because they are a lot more involved with having to pay for professional coaching. They feel that they have a stake in that. They want to be involved. So we've got to find ways in which we can engage them better because they are going to be that introjected, regulated influencer there, right? So when we talk about, hey, somebody's obviously influencing the motivation level of your athletes, you need to know that. So it could be the parent, or it could be yourself. Okay, I'm going to move on very quickly. And we're going to touch on, so what is culture? So how do we understand culture? A lot of time we look at it in terms of what we see, all right? The actions they do, the behaviors that your athletes show and demonstrate, the customs. So you have the All Blacks. So try and visualize that video. You have the All Blacks, they have the haka, you have your team, how they come in, they greet you. There is certain custom that you are already setting, certain routines that you're already setting. So that's very visual. That's something that you can clearly see. Okay, so this idea of the cultural iceberg is a good way to, or a good analogy to help you understand more about how do you define culture? How do you see culture? Okay, it's important because if you want to create that, you must understand what culture is all about. Okay, so this is what is at the top. So the analogy of the iceberg is that a lot of time, that's only at the top half. That's on the surface. So that's a visible culture. So what is unseen, what is really happening is right deep down. Okay? Things that are not seen, things that are really deeply rooted in there. So type in if you know what are they. I'm going to rattle off very soon. So those things that you think can influence a culture. So those things that I've mentioned really about action behavior, so obvious, right? The way they dress, you know, is it a school team or are they just, you know, loose and they come to training? Are they really in one particular color code or not? Okay. What is haka? Sorry, haka is just a battle cry that the New Zealanders use, you know, before they go on to battle in the ancient days. But the All Blacks use it as a way to pump themselves up. You know, and they will do it in front of their opponents, and then they start the match. Okay, so that's a haka. So it's not an acronym for anything. Yeah. So I'm going to start and rattle off some of these things there. Attitudes. Okay, some of the attitudes that they come in, you know, that they set, the beliefs that your team has, the motivation level that we talked about, right? That's going to influence the culture. If they are not motivated, they are not going to be able to perform. They are not going to be having that kind of positive culture. So you have a part to try and influence this motivation level. We talk about that, you know, influencing it through the car. Your leadership style. Are you a really authoritative kind of a coach? Or are you able to accept that, yep, I'm going to give some autonomy to my athlete, depending on the age group that you're dealing with. So I didn't really get a feel of the sort of age group that you are having. Obviously, the younger one won't need that sort of autonomy, a lot more of direct kind of instruction, but they can also have some form of autonomy as a simplified way. You decide that you are going to be doing about 5 to 10 push-ups. So instead of demanding that they do 10 push-ups, you might just give them for that day. Okay, because you are performing well, I'll let you decide. Would you prefer to do 5 push-ups, or do you think you're going to go all the way and do 10? And then make that decision. So in that little way, you are providing autonomy to your athletes, right? Meaning of success. I'm going to have a nice quote by John Wooden again about meaning of success. So what you deem as success will influence the sort of culture that you have in your team. So I'm going to touch on that. So it goes on. So it's all deep-rooted. It's all about how your team decides on certain things, because there's really embedded in your culture. They have a certain way of responding to a particular stimulus, whether it is defeat or victory. The way they respond to it is all deep-rooted in this culture that you set. And the other important thing that you have to take note about this iceberg is that 10% is what we see, right? This is what you observe of your other fellow coaches, their team. But 90% is all those things that we talk about, all those things that you can have an influence at. And if you set that right, it's going to build that positive culture that you want. Okay? So that quote that I was talking about John Wooden about this meaning of success. I like this because not everybody is going to get that championship title. So for him, I do not judge success based on championship. Rather, I judge it on how close we came to realizing our potential. Okay, so that is important because every team will be different. Not every team is going to get, only one team is going to be the champion. Then if you make this measure of success to be getting that title, you are going to have a bunch of demoralized athletes with you. So it is important that you know how to measure that potential, know what they can realistically be able to achieve, and they will enjoy their moment with you. So I don't know whether you know this gentleman here. So for those who are not so involved with football, maybe those who know who this person is, can you just type it out so I don't have to say it? So I'm just going to rattle off what I want you to see. So now you're going to hear from the viewpoint of a coach. He's going to be sharing some of those things that he feels were his tips of his leadership. But I want you to pull that out based on what you have really learned from this afternoon workshop about motivation, about culture, about the psychological needs. Okay, try and pull that out and then think about how did he build that winning culture at Liverpool. Did somebody type that? Thank you very much. I hear Klopp. Yep. Okay, so he's a German coach. He's the current coach of the Liverpool team. He has a unique way of leading, all right, being the coach. And I like that because that is most current and I hear it most often about that style. You compare that to perhaps a Jose Mourinho, all right? So listen to what he's going to be sharing.
I live 100% for the boys, with the boys, what we do for the club and all that stuff. I try everything to be as successful as possible. I have a lot more information than I give to the players, and not because I don't want to. I want to keep that, no, just because I want. They have to play a football game, and football is a game, and you have to play that with freedom. In the beginning, for example, when a new player is coming in, I don't give them any information. It's like let them play. Let's learn. That I learn about him, what he's doing naturally, and what we want to adjust, and what we want to leave with him, and what we want to stop him doing, and stuff like that. So you learn more about your players each day, and you know how to treat them, how to deal with them. A lot happens in the one-on-one talk, actually, but that's with the player and with the team. There are more things to do, and they're then all in the right shape and in the right position, and you try to help 11 players to do the right things in the right moment, actually. There are two reasons why I'm so energetic on the sideline. One is my character, obviously. I'm already much calmer than I used to be honest. I'm kind of the reserve tank for the boys. When they feel the energy level goes a bit down, then I'm still there and can kick their butt or whatever they need in this moment. It's better to be angry with me than to think, oh, it's too intense today. So you need always something like a response. So how I understand, I needed that as a player as well. So for the boys, I think they are well used to it. That's because I look always, if I give some credit or some compliments, they look exactly the same way. Then when I shout something not so positive on the pitch, and that's my problem with the face. So, but meanwhile, they are used to it. It was an absolutely conscious decision to go to England, to another country, to learn new things, to improve a new language and all that stuff. So that's all only positive. We met a lot of good people here. No, I don't miss anything. The world is, in Europe at least, small enough that we can reach everything in a couple of hours. This club is so unbelievable big. It's incredible. It feels really good, and it gives us a lot of power. For me, absolutely no pressure. I mean, I sometimes try to imagine how it is in all the living rooms all over the world. Millions and millions of people, when we are playing, are completely concentrated on what we are doing. During the week, they follow us wherever we go. They read everything about us and all that stuff, and it's very positive. That's like the best thing you can do in your spare time, actually, if you love football, obviously. And so I like it a lot that we have such a positive moment, and the people have really a lot of good moments during the season, and hopefully it may continue like this. All what we do in life, how I understand, is about relationship. Because otherwise you live in a forest alone, on a mountain alone, and if you only want to be alone and want to be responsible for exactly the things you do and no responsibility for anything else, you have to live alone. Otherwise, always when you enter a room, you have a little bit of responsibility at least for the mood in the room. There's a football team, we have to work really close together. Each player knows each name of each person who works at Melwood. It's not me to create an atmosphere. Each person in a room, each person is responsible for that, and in a football team especially. That it worked out well. We all win for each other meanwhile. We do it for Carol and Caroline. We do it because we know how important it is to them, and that makes it just more valuable, more worthy. It feels different. If you have a bigger group to do it for, the better it feels for yourself. That's how it is. I try everything to be as successful as possible. I live 100% for the boys, with the boys, what we do for the club and all that stuff. And I think that's leadership in the first case. As a leader, you cannot be the last who comes in and the first who goes out. That's how it is. You don't have to be always the first coming in or the last going out. That's like this, but you have to be an example as well. That's how it is. You have enough confidence, and that's very important for a leader, because confidence, if I would expect from myself that I know everything and I'm the best in everything, I couldn't have confidence, but I don't expect that. I know I'm good in a couple of things, really good in a few things, and that's enough. What I can do, my confidence is big enough that I can really let people grow next to me. It's no problem. I need experts around me. It's really, really very important that you're empathic, that you try to understand the people around you, and that you give real support to the people around you, and then everybody can act. And that's what leadership is. Have strong people around you with a better knowledge in different departments than yourself. Don't act like you know everything. Be ready to admit that I have no clue in the moment, so give me a couple of minutes, then I will have a clue probably. And that's exactly how I understand it. But it's not a real philosophy, it's just my way of life.
Okay, I hope you managed to capture quite a number of that. So I thought it was a gem. So I'm going to try and rattle off some of these things there that I felt was important, and it matches what we are covering today. First, in terms of autonomy. So if you manage to pick out certain things in terms of what he has done that allows that kind of autonomy, type that out. You know, if you can do it faster than what I say, better still. So you talk about football is a game that you have to have that freedom, all right? And what he actually means is that each player has his unique way of expressing themselves on the field, all right? So they have certain skill sets that is unique to that person, is not a standard sort of a skill. So he tries and find and discover that, allowing that player to discover themselves, allowing that freedom. He uses this word, let them play. So let the players perform naturally, and from there, he adapts it to the play that he wants. He obviously has a system, and he's known to have this idea of very fast pressing game. They call it Jürgen press. Yeah. So he wants to get the best out of the athletes and fit it nicely into his system. So autonomy. While he has a system, he allows them to have that individualized expression. Okay. And then in terms of relatedness, rattle off if you've seen some of those things that you think that will match what he says about relatedness, that sense of belonging. So observe and how they treat others. You know, he expects them to know the names of those people in the training ground and greet them. And he's a motivator. He talks about, you know, he's a reserve tank of the players, you know, that if they find that he's down, then you would go there and then you kick them in the butt, and sometimes his face looks as though he's really angry with them, and they know they are trying to up their level, you know. And again, about relatedness is this idea that the club is big, that association, that is not just me performing. It is about that club. It's about that support fans, the fan base. It's about the supporters all around the world that you are playing for. Then you start to see that that motivation becomes more than you yourself. Okay? They become more in terms of that association. We talk about that integrated kind of motivation, right? That regulation. So he talks about that. So a lot of times, if you Google, there's the thing that says about this means more for Liverpool, right? So he's trying to make them associate the players. It's not about you playing. It's about you playing for the entire club. Everything that is associated with the club. Okay? I know there are a couple of hands raised, so I know Chuan Leong is probably going to be helping me to take some of the question. I'm going to move on to the last one. Now, I want you to look at this tip there, and because you're going to have access to that, you can screenshot that, and then you can have some of these tips. But I want to see whether you understand that. I want you to try and pull out any of the tips there, and then tell me whether it relates to the 3 psychological needs that you have learned. Is it to do with dealing with the motivation issues that we talk about? Or are they talking about the culture that is visible, the culture that is deep-rooted? Okay, so I want you to pull that and maybe just put it quickly in the chat. All right, so I give you an example. So discuss success. What does it mean? So we did talk about that. It was in the deep culture. It was in the unseen culture. It's about what you as a coach talks about in terms of success. What is success to that team? So that's that tip. When you discuss about success, you are talking about that. You are dealing with that deep-rooted culture so that they know, they stay motivated because they know. For some, it will be the championship title. For another one, it's just qualifying for the Olympic Games, things like that. Or it could be just reaching the next round of the National School Games, things like that. Okay, so depending on that level. So let's try and see whether anyone is bold enough to try and answer this. Pick out a tip and tell me what you think is reflecting. Okay, I'm looking at it. So you are still not in the habit of interacting to that. I really encourage you with a lot of this online session that you should do that. Success is playing to their full potential. Okay, so that's one of that. So what do you think that that addresses? Yoki. Yep. So you talk about success is playing to their full potential. So for them to do that, what are we trying to talk about in today's setting? The workshop that we talk about. So success is playing to their full potential is 2 ways. So I don't know whether you are seeing it this way. So for the athletes, you are talking about athletes being motivated to get their competence level to that, to stay motivated, to stay within that program, right? Success is keep trying, even after failure, learn from mistake. Okay, so those are gems in which you want to build up as your culture. Okay, so not only as a positive culture, you want it as a successful team culture, right? But they need to buy into that. It is easily said. Every coach would like that. You got to bear in mind, how do we deal with these 3 psychological needs? Are you addressing and helping them fulfill these 3 needs? And then how do you build that culture? Have you addressed your leadership style? Have you talked about motivation? Have you talked about how you're going to measure that success for them? So they are very clear, your expectations of that. Okay, so I'm going to end with this, this picture here. Okay, so sometimes we want to create this culture, but unfortunately, we need to know as well to identify. And sometimes you have the bow chart. Now, the bow chart is creating it a little bit of a problem for you because you are trying to build that successful culture that some of you have talked about, right? So this quote, leaders must be ready to lift up those who are pulling together, those who are really fighting and going for that cause. But you must also be prepared to confront those who are dragging their oar and remove those who are drilling holes in the bottom of the boat, and you are not going to build that culture, all right? You got to be sensitive to know which one. You got to give them the ultimatum as well. You got to address it. If not, you're going to have a struggle in trying to build the culture. And with that, I thank you all for your attention and your interaction throughout the workshop there. I think Chuan Nam have picked up some of the questions, so I'm going to try and address the one that he have shortlisted.
Okay, thanks, Vincent. So we have picked up just a couple of questions related to the topic presented today. So question number one for you, Vincent, would be, how do you create a positive culture for special needs kids?
Oh, wow, okay. So I don't have experience dealing with the special needs kids there, but athletes like that, obviously you need experience in dealing with them. You need to know their motivation level is totally different from that of an able athlete, right? So, but bearing in mind, any human being will have the same sort of psychological needs. If you keep in mind that acronym of CARS, you know that you can address that. So, competence level, are you equipped enough to deal with somebody who has uniquely, obviously it will be unique disabilities or constraints that they have? You know, are you giving them that confidence that you are on top of the game? You know how to help me feel that success. So that's an example. You know, so as long as you have that experience, as long as you do your research in terms of how do I help that athlete of mine, okay, in terms of the C, A, giving them the autonomy as well, because you do not know the sort of pains that they go through, the sort of limitations that they have. So you have to deal with that. But if you know the acronyms that you're dealing with, you will be able to then understand how can I better deal with my athletes. Whatever the sport, whatever the category of athletes that you're dealing with, it applies. Because these are three basic human needs that we have there. And then we talk about the other aspects of it. So it applies. So to me, even though I don't have that experience, that will be my limitation. I got to grow the experience, but you being involved with that, knowing the athletes and allowing them to express themselves, you will start to know that better. And if you listen to what Jurgen Klopp says, he always observes them, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch, and how they present themselves. And that's how you get to understand your athletes better and deal with the areas that we talked about. I hope I addressed that.
Okay, thanks, Vincent. Just one last question. For one-to-one coaching, how do you achieve relatedness with the student?
All right, yep. So even though it is individual, I give you this scenario. I have a private coaching for my sport, all right? So I'm constantly having to deal with that child. So I make sure that that environment that that person is being involved with will be unique, that they want to return back to that kind of environment. And they will be telling their parent, wow, I want to go back to that coaching. So that becomes directly your relatedness. But you don't have the luxury of other players, other team members, or other staff members who can add into that dynamics of greater relatedness. Okay, so relatedness doesn't matter, even if it is just a one-on-one, you can create that. Some coaches do that. You indirectly, you will have that little reward for them, you know, after a hard session like that, and you want to make sure that they know you buy a little lollipop, you have them somewhere, and you give that kid, and it's a token. And with that token, they know that the coach is connecting with me. You are acknowledging and my efforts, yeah? And they will talk about it. They will tell their parents, yeah, that coach gave this to me, and you really build that relatedness, you know, that sense of belonging that that child or that athlete has with you. Now, at a higher level as well, it's the same thing. You have a lot of athletes who talk about, I want to be coached by so-and-so, okay? Even though they move up to the national program, that relatedness is so strong, and it's not possible for you to just break it away. You know, you have to respect the fact that there is this coach and athlete interaction that is very strong and that makes a big difference. And that's why probably sometimes there is always this tension, that tension between your NSA and clubs or the private coaches there. How do you deal with that? Because there is this issue of relatedness that has really been built up. Okay? And if I can use it, the unrelatedness, all right, between the other coach and the athlete. I hope I answered that question in a bit of a perfected way.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. So thanks, coaches, also for your participation today. We have moved to the feedback session.